Hey, no laughing. Hola, cage fighting connoisseurs. The sexiest words in MMA, according to some people on Twitter. No, nobody's saying that. In fact, it's been described by an attractive young lady as the one of the things not to say in bed. I was personally touched by this. Survived not killing myself. We are here for the UFC 173 Vivisection.
I don't even know what any of that fucking shit meant.
And now you're cursing. This is professional media. We've got Dallas Winston here and Chewbacca. We've got Connor Rubish. These guys know the fighters, know the fights. We're going to talk about every fight on the UFC 173 pay-per-view card, which is happening this Saturday. And we're going to give you the ups, the downs, the ins, and the outs. I need to open my best fight odds website so we can tell you who's favorite and who's not. And first off, general thoughts on the pay-per-view card, guys.
You know, at first I didn't think it was that good. I thought beyond the top 3 fights it really got kind of weak. But, you know, if you think about Mizugaki and Rivera, that's going to be a hell of a scrap. I don't see someone not getting punched in the face liberally in that one. And then James Krauss and Jamie Varner, that, I mean, kind of the same thing. That should be a good scrap. I don't know. You know, it's a fucking UFC card. Like I always say, if you don't like it, there'll be another one in a couple days.
I'm pretty good with this card. I find this one to be more than acceptable, actually. Actually, it would have been better with the Machida-Weidman matchup, which I'm still really looking forward to. But, I mean, on the main card,
that's a big one.
Honestly, the least interesting fight to me on this main card is Henderson versus Cormier, because Henderson's pretty unimpressive, and Cormier hasn't exactly been exciting lately. I know it's an important fight. I understand why it's the co-main, but Lawler versus Ellenberger is guaranteed action, and it's incredibly relevant to the future of the welterweight.
Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
All right.
So anyway,
True.
all right.
But it's relevant. And Mizugaki versus Rivera is also, in my eyes, a top contender fight.
Yeah.
And Varner versus Krauss, that's an action fight there, which is a good way to open up the main card. So, you know, I'm looking forward to it all.
Well,
is Rivera a contender now?
He could be with a win over Mizugaki.
Yeah, so, okay.
I think it's his get-over fight. Anyway, we are starting with the 3 fights on the UFC Fight Pass card. First up, welterweights David Michau versus Liang. Who wants this first? Who's dying to get at this one?
Woo!
Okay, Connor, that's you.
I'm just going to go. Let's get through these early ones quickly, right? Because
that's the game plan. Let's focus on the money.
I'm going to go with Liang in this matchup. Neither of these guys, I mean, you know, they're on the first Fight Pass fight for a reason. I'm just not really particularly interested in the matchup. Jing Liang has pretty solid experience. His only losses are, yes, to guys on the regional level, but to pretty qualified journeymen. He picked up a loss to Myung Ho Bai, who is not a bad fighter at all in Legend FC. And I don't know, I guess him by submission.
Interesting pick. Dallas?
It's possible I just saw a Yeti move behind Connor.
And that could be, you know, anyway.
To me, that's important.
Make your pick!
Actually,
that was a glass of orange juice. But anyway, make your pick.
Jing Liang is kind of, I don't want to say being touted. So there's not a lot of fighters out of China. And he's out of the China top team. Pretty impressive to me. I think he might have a better shot than who's our Chinese MMA savior. What the fuck's Taekwon Zhang?
Yep.
I think he's going to be a little better off. Michau, I don't know a lot about him. He was on Tough 16, I believe, and he lost to Eddie Ellis, which is totally respectable. Eddie Ellis is a veteran guy, and he's picked up some big wins lately. I can't remember who the last one was. It was impressive, but he's got a win over Jesse Taylor, Steve Berger, so better than the average cat. His record, I mean, the guys he's beaten are, I want to say there's only 1 or 2 with a winning record. So kind of by default here, I'm going to go with the Jingling Baby. That's when you bring it back. You guys.
And the odds makers are disagreeing with our panel. Everybody's got Michau favored anywhere from -147 all the way up to -160.
Really?
Jing Liang Li, which is how the Chinese say it, last name first or family name first, is +125 all the way up to +135. And that brings us to the second fight of the Fight Pass card, featherweight Sam Cecilia versus Aaron Phillips. Dallas, you can take this one first.
I mean, you got to go with Cecilia in this one. He's been looking pretty well. Pretty well? I don't even think that's English.
He looks healthy.
That too.
That's what that means. He's well.
He's well. Thank you very much from a health standpoint. But I mean, Aaron Phillips, I think he's a black belt in Taekwondo, but he's got 5 fights. I mean, he's going to be a total question mark. I'm kind of okay with this because from the way Cecilia has, he's looked pretty good, and he's a tough cat. I mean, even though he has a tendency to leave his hands down, he throws hard, he's a good wrestler, he's a gamer. So I think you got to pick him, but Phillips, I think, is a guy that, with only 5 fights, it's the UFC saying, you might be something special. If so, let's see it. But I'm not counting on it, so I'm going to go with Cecilia.
And yeah, Connor?
It's hard to disagree with that. Cecilia looked... I guess he has looked good lately, except for the Cole Miller fight. But I think Cole Miller is one of those guys who's just crafty enough to beat anybody but the champion on any given day in his division. He's a very good fighter, and he's had mental lapses of his own, but he's really dangerous. Cecilia is not exactly a top flight in his division, but I mean, it's hard to see somebody with only 5 fights beating him. Cecilia comes from a pretty solid camp, good wrestling. He hits like a truck. I mean, Dallas pretty much covered all the important points in his few sentences earlier.
And this time the odds makers agree. They've got Cecilia favored anywhere from -140 all the way up to -175. Honestly, I would think a little bit bigger spread might be appropriate there. Aaron Phillips, underdog +120 all the way up to +145. I don't know. Might put a little marker on Cecilia if you're just a degenerate gambler who has to get in on all the actions.
You don't have to frown upon gambling every time since we
gambling is a sin and a dumb idea, Dallas.
Let's focus on the sin aspect because that's what really.
Well, sin. Here's my take on morals. I'm not a religious person. I try to be relatively semi-moral, but probably wouldn't cut it by most American standards. But
relatively semi-moral. That's a way to hang yourself out there.
Hey, I'm a solid citizen, married man, tax-paying voter. How about that? All right. But morality is just like a guide to, better odds of having a happy life. And
odds?
As a rule,
you gambling whore, you're going to hell.
Exactly. And if you want to take the safe road, don't gamble. Like people who gamble, as a rule, as a mathematical certainty, indeed, have poorer financial outcomes than people who don't gamble. I'll guarantee you that is the truth. Anyway, lightweights, Anthony Inocuani versus Vince Pichel. Having said that, I think it's fun, relatively harmless fights. Have at it. It's not going to be stopped. Dallas, what do you think about Inocuani versus Pichel?
I'm trying to just wipe away all the confusion from a lot from you today. Your intro and that whole... So anyways,
advice to viewers: next time, anytime Nate's talking, just watch Dallas's face in the corner of the screen. It's the best part of the whole broadcast. It really is.
Thank you. That might be. I kind of practiced that hardcore.
Just these wry, confused.
All right. So anyways, on to the face punching. I really don't know on this one. I'm leaning towards Inocuani, but Pichel is a guy that I think. I kind of did. A lot of people kind of expected him to fade out after Tough, and he's shown some promising aspects. So, I really don't know on this one, but I'm going to go with Inocuani. I mean, he's just the kind of guy where if you're unsure, you fall back on him. Experienced, excellent Muay Thai. And who knows? I mean, overall, over the grand trajectory of his career, he hasn't evolved dramatically at all. But there's no reason to assume why he's not still cleaning up little things, or even worst case scenario, getting better at his core competency. He's got really technical Muay Thai, so I think that and his takedown defense to me is good enough just to kind of ride with by default.
And Connor?
I almost want to pick Vince Pichel because watching his last fights, I realized that he has Peter Cunningham in his corner when he fights, which is awesome. For those of you who don't know who Peter Cunningham is, kickboxing legend, just an absolutely spectacular fighter back in his day. He was one of the breed of Western kickboxers who would go and do all of their fancy traditional martial art moves and beat up Thai fighters in their hometowns, so he was pretty cool. That being said, Vince Pichel is nothing like Peter Cunningham in his application or execution of technique. Anthony Inocuani, I see this one as a lot wider than Dallas does, really. Pichel is one of those guys who just does not impress me. Anytime I see him fight, even when he wins, even when he knocks the guy out, I see him and I'm like, this guy is waiting for somebody who's a really talented striker to teach him a few lessons about, he just doesn't seem to have that smoothness to his style. Everything just kind of seems, I don't know, it's MMA striking. Clunky is a very good way to put it. Clunky. Whereas Inocuani is exactly the opposite of clunky. Inocuani's only problem in striking is that he tends to kind of fade on volume sometimes. He's just not active enough. But he hits hard, he's accurate, he's long, and the last time he fought a guy with clunky but serviceable striking was Roger Bowling. And I kind of expect a similar result to that fight, which was a devastating left hook knockout for Inocuani.
Which was a treat for the fans. So as soon as you said that, I said, yes, let's have some of that. The odds makers, what do the odds makers say? Oh, they like Inocuani too. They've got him favored anywhere from -230 all the way up to -286. Pichel is the underdog in a pretty small range there, +175 up to +202. And that brings us to the Fox Sports 1 preliminary card, starting with lightweights, Iaquinta and Mitch Clark. Dallas, you can go first again.
I think it's Connor's turn. Let's be fair. And
okay, Connor, since Dallas ducked the fight.
Default Iaquinta pick here from me. I'm an absolute Iaquinta fanboy. I love watching every single fight that he has. I don't know what it is. I just love his style. I have a soft spot for guys who are technical, but they're still kind of rough and tumble brawlers when they need to be. And I think that describes Iaquinta to a T. He's his only problem is he just gives away one round every time he fights three. I don't know what it is about Iaquinta, but he just can't seem to have a fight without a mental lapse that ends up giving away a round. And some people have proposed, I think it was Zane or it may have been Dallas who proposed that it was a knee injury that he had spent almost a year recovering from that kind of have changed his style. So he may be learning his way around a less movement-heavy style, but he's got all the aspects of the Serra Longo camp that I like. Good jiu-jitsu, solid wrestling, really good fundamental striking with, he's actually got footwork, which is a rarity in MMA, especially kind of in the mid to lower tiers, which is where he sits right now. So not even going to talk about Mitch Clark. I'm picking Iaquinta because I want to see him succeed. I love his style. So don't bet on that, but that's what I would like to see happen.
That's the kind of flagrant bias and one-sided analysis you can count on here from the MMA Nation crew. Dallas, what do you got?
Yeah, no reason to have Nate here when Connor's going to pull. Sorry. I totally agree, though, because, being a Michigan guy, there's not a lot of solid reps, although I've been saying lately between Miles Jury and Darren Cruikshank that we're definitely making up for our lack of quantity with some serious quality. But anyways, Iaquinta beat Miles Jury on tough, and I was shocked because I thought not only Jury was going to win that, I thought he was going to steamroll everybody. So that's when I first really took note of the dude. And for some reason, I don't know why, the Ryan Couture fight really stood out. And I could be totally wrong. Maybe I didn't have a beat on him, but that's when I kind of started to put him in a higher level. I think he might be able to battle his way into a fringe contender slot. The way he's performed so far, kind of like when Connor said by default, it's nothing against Mitch Clark, but I think you need to have something that jumps out because he's so well-rounded and not just like he's B or B plus in all areas. I mean, he's pushing A minus in a lot of those areas. Granted, he hasn't fought like super high-level competition, but you need to have one very pointed weapon in order to get in and have a good chance, I think, to defeat Iaquinta. And I don't think Mitch Clark has it, so I'm going to go with Iaquinta too.
All right, so our guys are all ignoring Mitch Clark. So are the odds makers. Iaquinta is the most heavily favored guy we've come across so far. He is at -360, -348, all the way up to -500.
Ooh.
So Mitch Clark's mom, if you're out there, you might want to drop a dime on your boy. He's the underdog to the tune of +300, all the way up to +315. And that brings us next to bantamweights Chris Holdsworth against King Chico Camus. Or is it Chico King Camus? Is there some King Camus we're supposed to know of that we don't? That's the question. Dallas, talk about the fight, not the nickname.
Isn't it Camu? Is he not Camu?
I said Camu, and everybody makes fun of me. Are you making fun of me again?
No, I'm not.
Talk about the fight. Talk about the fight.
That's how I want to say it. That's how I want to say it.
Camu. His nickname is the Heifer.
That's how it's said by literate people.
Camu is a writer, Dallas, not a cow.
Okay, but the
most important existentialist writer of the 20th century, I'll have you know.
Dallas, you son of a bitch.
Okay, I'm trying to think something clever to say, but it's too early over in my parts of the world, so I'll submit.
We're in the same part of the world, Dallas. It's not that early.
All right. Well, I'm sure I can think of another excuse for not having anything clever to say.
Just talk about the face punching. Connor, quit teasing Dallas. It's a professional show. That's my job. All right.
Don't say teasing. That sounds kind of a little effeminate, don't you think? Mockery.
Get a load of this, baby. Oh, go ahead.
So I was really impressed with Holdsworth on The Ultimate Fighter. I'm going to call him Chico, or the King. He kind of a guy that I just haven't been able to both like get a really good read on his style to learn exactly. I mean, he's an excellent scrambler. I want to say he's kind of small for the weight class. I could be. Anyone can feel free to correct me there. Holdsworth, he was nice on The Ultimate Fighter. I'm not so sure where his striking level is at, but I like his aggression in the way that he sets up his entries into either the clinch or a takedown, and he's an excellent jiu-jitsu player. I want to say he's a jiu-jitsu belt. I have no idea who's favored in this one. I'd be interested for Nate to spout that off, but I'm kind of leaning towards Holdsworth here, and I know he's a little bit of an unknown. I don't know a lot about his record outside of Tough either, but I don't know. I'm kind of feeling I can take him by submission here.
All right, and Connor?
Somebody tell me who knows, because I couldn't seem to find out. Is Holdsworth still working with Dwayne Ludwig as his coach?
I have no idea.
Because that was his coach in the
He was working with Ludwig while Ludwig was out of Ludwig's Colorado gym, or out of California with Alpha
I'm not sure. Ludwig was his coach in his main event, or in his Ultimate Fighter finale fight.
All bets are off with Ludwig because of the fallout with the Alpha Male split. So if he had a separate side relationship with Ludwig, he's probably still with him, but who knows?
Because is Holdsworth not an Alpha Male member, is he?
I don't think so.
So I think he's got an independent coaching relaation with Ludwig. I don't know how much.
A little something on the side, is that what you're saying?
He's Ludwig's mashed potatoes, yeah. He's the side dish. But the thing is, I think that comes across in Holdsworth's striking. Holdsworth is a guy who basically every time he fought on The Ultimate Fighter, because he has the jiu-jitsu background, he was expected to be the grappler, whereas his opponent would try to strike with him and he would just whoop their asses on feet. He's very, very underrated as a striker. Much like all the alpha male guys showed, he's become very good at mixing in the threats of his takedown with his striking, at changing levels, faking shots, and throwing right hands. He's very good at changing levels and then coming up with a head kick. It's actually a technique that he's used numerous times to good success. Chico Camu, to me, is more of a strict grappler. I think he had a really fun fight with Yalton Meza, his last performance. But I don't think that he can really hang with Holdsworth, which is ironic, once again, given Holdsworth's reputation as a grappler. But for a 5-0 guy, I'm feeling pretty heavily favored towards Holdsworth in this matchup. I know he doesn't have the experience, but I think that he's actually very promising. And he kind of ran through his competition on The Ultimate Fighter, and we've seen a lot of tough guys wash out over the years, but I think Holdsworth, this could be the only thing is this could be a little too much too soon for him.
And so the odds makers agree with both of you guys. They've got Holdsworth as the favorite, anywhere from -324 all the way up to -476, which might be a bit rich.
That's ridiculous.
Chico is the man, and he is the underdog anywhere from +260 all the way up to +300. And that brings us to a fight that I personally am most invested in these undercards. The lightweights, Tony Ferguson and Katsunori Kikuno. Come on, guys. Tell me the crescent kick is going to work and that Kikuno can get past Ferguson. Come on. Who wants to tell me that? Connor, tell me all about the crescent kick and how it's going to knock him out.
Kikuno's got more than a crescent kick. I mean, he's a pretty well-rounded guy, actually.
With the zombie walk? Is he going to use the zombie walk?
Yeah, he will always use the zombie walk. Kikuno cannot fight in a way that does not look like the living dead have risen. But Kikuno is a pretty... I mean, I think the thing that we saw the most in Kikuno's last fight, it wasn't exactly a barn burner, but we saw that he has pretty stout takedown defense. It may be helped by the fact that he's so small for his division. He's just got a sturdy frame compared to all the other guys, and he was fighting a particular tall opponent, if I remember correctly. But and Ferguson's a pretty long guy too. Kikuno is good. He's good at getting the underhooks. He's not worried about having his hands glued to his face, so he's always very, very aware. He has very good vision whenever he fights somebody, which is why he's so good at finding those tiny openings with that Kyokushin-style crescent kick, which is a beautiful technique. But Ferguson is not a an opponent to just who's just going to roll over. I mean, Ferguson's been really tough in his UFC fights so far. Mike Rio's not a guy, not a pushover either. And a loss to Michael Johnson that didn't exactly look good for Ferguson at first is now we've seen what Michael Johnson is capable of, so it looks a lot better in retrospect. And then, wins over Yves Edwards and Aaron Riley. I don't know. I'm going to once again just kind of make a favoritism pick because I like Kikuno's style a lot. He's got very accurate punching. And the thing about Kikuno is he's got weird power, too. He's one of those guys who doesn't look like he puts a lot into his strikes, but he can kind of touch you with like this awkward long hook, and it just flattens you. And it's really hard to explain, but he hits hard. He's got some dynamite in his hands. And the kicking game to mix it up, good defense, awkward style. I don't think Ferguson's experienced enough to be able to figure out Kikuno. I think he's going to have the Machida, awkward style wins the day advantage.
And Dallas?
Refresh my memory. Who did Kikuno fight in his debut?
Oh God, what was the guy's name? It was on the Japan card, and so it was basically
it was on
just
the prelim fight of it. I mean, it was.
He fought Quinn Mulhern.
Yep.
Quinn Mulhern, that's right. And also, if someone can stat it up, what the size or height difference is going to be between these two, maybe in the background. So, yeah, I mean, I love Kikuno for everything. I mean, way back, since early in the day, even when, he fought Eddie Alvarez. And if you think about it, now that Eddie Alvarez is kind of recognized as one of the top lightweights in the world, if you look at the way Kikuno performed against him.
He did well.
I've got the heights. Ferguson has a significant advantage. He's 6 feet tall. Kikuno is only 5'8". I think Kikuno should be fighting at featherweight in the UFC.
Wikipedia says 5'7" for Kikuno.
Well,
Sherdog says 5'8".
So in his debut, I can't put my finger on exactly what it was, but there were a couple concerns about, and I don't want to be that guy, but like the difference between fighting in America under the unified rules. I think he was notably complacent and hesitant at a lot of times when he had every reason to turn it on. He's made that style work. Every time I see him standing up, I always want to Photoshop any kind of sign in his hand because it's such an odd thing, but there's no question he makes it work. Yeah, there's no question he makes it work for him. But I think if you look at a guy like Alvarez, that's an excellent matchup. Keep going, Connor. I think it's Eddie Alvarez. It sounds crazy to say, but that's a guy that matched up pretty good with him because Eddie wants to come in and get in close quarters and get right in your grill. In Kikuno, like when Connor said, he not only has deceiving power in his strikes, but he's deceivingly strong. And I think it's like he has that judo base. His feet are rooted so firmly to the canvas, and he's so strong. He's so difficult to off balance. So that's why a close quarters opponent favors him. It's a favorable opponent for him. And Ferguson is the exact opposite. He's taller, he's longer, and he has the ability to stay out on the fringe and box away if he wants, or to change levels. And that's where he's kind of a three-pronged threat because he's really agile and explosive for being kind of a scrawny, tall guy. And he's got legit wrestling. So I think that's going to be a really tough matchup for Kikuno. And Tony's the kind of guy that it's not that he's excelled in fighting in a way that judges would like, and there's a lot of different ways to do that. That doesn't mean safety. But I do think that now, after a couple losses and some experience under his belt, that he's going to fight smart. So he's going to look to have momentous flurries and maybe, hit takedowns and do things that I think Kikuno will be susceptible to. Kikuno's not only not going to do things that might be pleasing to the judge's eyes, but he's going to be susceptible when Tony tries to do that. I actually really like both of these guys. And actually, I should include him. Tony's a Michigan guy, too, even though he doesn't fight out of here anymore. He wrestled at Grand Valley State. I really like Ferguson, and I hate to do it because I would like to see not only just some solid overseas fighter, be them Japanese, German, whatever, but a guy that has the Machida-esque, traditional martial arts flavor that Kikuno has. It's a dying art, and I wish we could see more of it, but logically I'm going to take Ferguson here.
Well, we've got, who was it who just beat Darren Montague? I can't remember his name. Michihiro Omagawa?
Yes, that flyweight.
No,
yeah,
no,
it
wasn't Omagawa.
No, I'm thinking of the wrong name.
Horiguchi?
Yes, Horiguchi.
The crazy bee.
Yeah, he's legit. He's younger. He's big for his division. He's got a lot of advantages. Kikuno
That's more the Machida style because he has that Shotokan, the point fighting karate background. I want to add to what Dallas said though, because I'm gonna say why I think Ferguson won't have as much of an advantage at range as Dallas thinks. I think that Kikuno is deceptively good at pressure fighting, and to me, I'm kind of, in picking Kikuno, I'm kind of banking on the fact that he's going to be able to translate that to the octagon, which I know is a big question because he was always good at trapping guys in corners in the ring when he was fighting overseas. But the octagon is obviously a different story. Ferguson is a good mover. The thing about Kikuno's stance, which I was mimicking before, this awkward, is that he stands incredibly square because he has great confidence in his defense, but that basically gives him the advantage in striking from either side, which is why he's so good at corralling people into the corners and against the fences, because it's very difficult to escape side to side and kind of play that rangy boxing game that Ferguson will likely look to play, because you're going to be running into kicks or punches from either side. And Kikuno can switch stances, he can stand square, however he needs to stand to punish you for trying to get away from him, he will. So you're right, though. Kikuno did look a little hesitant against Mulhern. I think he soundly beat him, but it wasn't exactly the kind of dominance we would hope for a guy like Kikuno, who a lot of old Pride-era fans have their hopes pinned on as just being a good Japanese fighter. But I think that we're going to see Kikuno. It's a chancy prediction, but I think we're going to see Kikuno play an effective pressuring game against Ferguson.
Well, am I wrong that he did not do any of those things that that kind of define his I mean, he did a lot of things, but he didn't come forward and look to trap. He kind of laid back and almost looked to counter and was
but it didn't even look like he was hesitant. He just kind of looked lazy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay,
that was a really weird fight. I don't know what to make of.
I think maybe he just wasn't taking Mulhern seriously. That's why I hesitate to say that he's not going to be able to do what he used to do in the ring, in the octagon, because his first octagon performance, he didn't look like he was lost or afraid or hesitant. He just looked like he didn't care. So, but he has that blank expression all the time, so it may be just very hard to read him.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. He also had a long layoff before that fight. But anyway, the odds makers agree with Dallas. They've got Ferguson favored anywhere from minus 269 all the way up to minus 383 on the high end. Kikuno, the underdog, anywhere from plus 220 all the way up to plus 249. And that brings us to Francisco Trinaldo and Michael Chiesa. Lightweights wrapping up the preliminary Fox Sports 1 card. And I believe it's Dallas's turn.
Oh, thank God.
I don't have a ton to say about this one just because, I mean, my respect has really grown for Trinaldo. He's a big dude. He's almost like T-Bow-like in the cage. I mean, sick jiu-jitsu. His striking isn't beautifully technical, but it's really, really effective. Actually, I've been kind of impressed with Chiesa, too. Mostly, I mean, that dude, for a long, tall, lanky wrestler, he has got some scrambling. Really, really impressed. I don't know anything about his training regimen or team, but I would guess that either I didn't see it before or he's really improving his jiu-jitsu tech, which is excellent for a wrestler like him to do. You don't have to be a master. You don't have to play guard and pull guard and all that shit. But when you can just understand the basic principles of position work, passing, submission awareness, both offensive and defensive, I think that's really going to it's going to play into his style really well. I don't have a strong feeling on this at all. Chiesa's going to be a lot taller, but Trinaldo's just like a big beast. So this one I could see going either way, but I definitely see Trinaldo as having more offensive potency and therefore better options to win the fight.
And Connor?
I'm going to go with Chiesa on this one, just by crazy bearded man factor. Chiesa is like absolutely unpredictable, and his striking is like one of the ugliest things you'll ever see, and yet it's unbelievably effective. He almost knocked out Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal is a slow starter and traditionally kind of gets lit up early in his fights, but I mean the confidence that he showed to go after Masvidal with these unorthodox kicks and with these long straight punches said a lot to me about how much more confident he's growing as a complete mixed martial artist. And I think we saw him maybe getting over getting over a little loss of confidence against Colton Smith because, of course, Masvidal submitted him, and Chiesa's not the kind of guy who likes to be submitted. He's the submission guy. And Colton Smith almost beat him too, but like Dallas said, he's a monster in the scrambles. He's just unbelievably crafty in those scrambles. And if you leave something hanging out, if you leave your neck exposed or you leave an arm hanging, he's going to snatch it up. He's one of the few guys who, against this level of competition, you can reliably guess that if he wins, it will be by rear naked choke. He's that good at implementing his game on the ground. And that's what he likes to do. Those long limbs when he gets your back are very, very dangerous for the choke game. Dallas?
Kind of a detail thing, but I think I just don't know if he's game enough to snatch up like an arm for an arm bar. I just haven't seen that. He tends to be everything you said I agree with, but he seems to be a little more limited. And again, that's not a bad thing for a wrestler like that. I like what he's doing. I would like to see him get to the point where with his wrestling and scrambling skills, he can jump on an arm or, maneuver for an arm triangle as he's passing, or even jump on a leg.
But I don't know if he's come across as limited to me. I think he's just come across at being very dominant at what he likes to do. I think he likes to take the back. He has excellent back takes. Once he gets your back, he's very difficult to shake off. And, he's very crafty at sneaking in those chokes. It's not exactly easy these days to fight a UFC caliber opponent and with the gloves on and everything, get in a rear naked choke. We see a lot of fights where guys will hang out with somebody on their back for 3 minutes and survive the round. That happens frequently these days. Probably the choke is the least likely outcome or the less likely outcome when someone does get the back. People tend to survive that position these days. It's just MMA savvy that's growing. But Chiesa has been fighting UFC caliber opponents, Kuivanen, Iaquinta, Colton Smith, and he looked good against Masvidal before getting a little too frenzied with his striking and getting submitted in the second round.
Maybe limited wasn't the best word. I guess an area that I'd like to see him really evolve into is a little heavy on the submission side. So in those scrambles, and again, like I said, it's not that
Fair
he
enough,
hasn't.
We've got to do justice to the main card.
Let's just keep moving on. Actually, it was what I meant to say.
Let's move on. Dallas was reading my mind there, even as I talked over him. Michael Chiesa is favored by the odds makers, but not by a whole lot. Minus 122 all the way up to minus 155. Trinaldo, the underdog, plus 110 all the way up to plus 125. And that brings us to the pay-per-view opener. Lightweights Jamie the Worm Varner versus James Krauss. Got to have a note for those of you masochists who watch both the Care Don't Care preview and the Vivisection. Eugene and I were wildly off with some of the allegedly fact-based statements I made about James Krauss yesterday. So my apologies. He is not 1-3 in his last 4 fights. Go ahead, guys.
First time ever.
Yeah. Anybody watching the Care Don't Care and thinking they're getting like the facts, yeah, you're not. So it's the blind leading the blind. Connor, you go first.
This is a good fight, man. This is a great fight in terms of action. This is one of those fights where it basically is Jamie Varner's fight to lose, the way that I see it. It hinges on how Jamie Varner chooses to approach Krauss. Because if Jamie Varner decides to wrestle him and use his submission grappling acumen, I think he can win this fight pretty handily. If he does what Jamie Varner likes to do, which is just go insane and slug it out with anybody who's willing to trade punches with him, Krauss stands a pretty good chance of making it very competitive. That's not to say that Krauss is a slouch off of his back. He's very, very good with his submission game. But Varner's just one of those guys who is excellent at implementing a mixed boxing and wrestling game. I think Dallas and I might have said this before, he's kind of one of those quintessential wrestle boxers. He's got a very good blend, and he's got good fundamental boxing. When he decides to fight technically, as in the first round against Abel Trujillo, and the first half of the second round, he's good. He comes in behind a jab, he will use a left hook and guide people into his right hand. He hits hard. He's got a good chin. The only major flaw in his game is that he just likes to fight too much. He's technically good, but he just likes to brawl. And I think that Krauss does stand a pretty good chance of making him brawl with him. We've seen Krauss, when Krauss fought Sam Stout, he's very good at throwing back and keeping his range, throwing these very unpredictable kicks. I think against Stout we saw a lot of spinning back kicks from Krauss, didn't we? We saw some good body kicks.
He threw a capoeira kick, I think a martello kick.
Okay,
Maybe
yeah.
That's how I was going to, identify him to you, because we were talking about that. He threw an elbow that we loved, and I think a capoeira kick too.
Yeah, so Krauss is a very crafty striker, and he's that exciting combination of guy with no takedown defense who's exciting off his back. But I think that Varner is crafty enough on the ground that he can survive submissions, and if he chooses to take Krauss down, he may even be able to submit him or just take a decision. But it really, really depends on whether or not Varner implements his wrestling and fights smart. So I'm going to say I'm leaning slightly towards Varner, but I predict this will be an exciting fight either way.
Am I incorrect here that the bulk of Krauss's wins are subs? Like, doesn't he have double-digit sub wins on his record?
Let's see.
Let's see.
13 submission wins, 5 knockouts.
Yeah, so that's pretty steep.
2 decisions. He's a finisher.
I agree with everything Connor said. Jamie Varner is the kind of guy that I hope stays in the UFC, and it's not that like he's this electrifying anything. I mean, he's a dude that, the archetypal wrestle boxer, but like Connor said, maybe it's that he just loves to fight, but every Jamie Varner fight will have some semblance of major ebbs and flows, whether it's just in a little interaction or it's like we saw with Trujillo, or even going way back to Hermes Franca, where I think, he was losing. Who was that? Let me make sure I get these guys right. He was a couple minutes away from beating Hermes back in the day, and that's when Hermes went on to go for the lightweight title before they got rid of it. Or maybe it was after that.
Yeah, I'm just after that.
Talking. So I love Jamie Varner. I think that the size discrepancy, I want to say that Krauss has several inches on him, 4, 5, 6. Connor pretty much said it all, but I'm kind of leaning towards Krauss here. I think his range, if he fights smart, will be a problem because when, Jamie does well with his wrestle boxing, but he's not like a big angle guy. He's not, both with his feet and his circling, and he's not going to keep his head moving. He's I wouldn't call him just a straight line fighter, but for the most part, he'll maybe throw 1 or 2 setup angles in there. And Krauss, man, I want to say he's pretty damn solid off his back. And I'm not saying he's gonna tap Varner out, but I think he's the kind of guy that can be active with his hips, just keep moving, keep activity going, and then that's how you get escapes. If you want to escape, pursue a submission with everything you have, and then as soon as they are forced to react to that, or vice versa, try to escape like hell and then go back to a submission attack. And I don't know, maybe I'm making that up, but I want to say this is really close. I'm leaning towards Krauss in this one, but this should be a really good fight.
Great main card opener. Honestly, this is the kind of fight that if they had one more big name fight for the main card, this would be the perfect lead-in. But Chiesa versus Trinaldo should be fun.
If Weidman and Machida had made it for the title fight, this probably would have been the lead-in, and it would have been a good one. Krauss has a 6-inch height advantage. He's 6'2". Varner is 5'8", so that is significant and could come into a special play if they're tangling around on the ground, and Krauss is able to put those long legs and long arms into action. And that brings us to bantamweights, Takeya Mizugaki versus Francisco Rivera. This might be the most technically and competitively significant fight on the card. Whose turn? Who wants this first? Connor, Dallas?
I'll take it.
All right, Connor.
I love this fight. I'm really looking forward to this one. These are 2 top bantamweights, in my opinion. Rivera has been on the cusp of breaking through, as has Mizugaki, for a long time. Now that they've finally started giving Mizugaki fighters who aren't, Uriah Faber or other championship contenders, he's actually been able to put together a solid winning streak, and he's looked very impressive in the process. Mizugaki is one of those guys. Again, a wrestle boxer. He's got underrated boxing. He really does. I think he showed that against Nam Phan. Until he started to gas in the 3rd round, he, just basically tired himself out by kicking Nam Phan's ass. He really did he set up shop on Nam Phan for 2.5 rounds easily. And but Francisco Rivera, man, also underrated boxer. He's one of those guys he reminds me of Cub Swanson, where he's got a style that seems pretty wild and sometimes looks like he's flailing, but he knows what he's doing. He's surprisingly accurate and has surprisingly good defense as well. I think he's actually got some of the highest striking defense in the division. He's got good head movement. He's got a solid chin to go along with it, and he's a knockout artist, man. More so than Mizugaki, he's got finishing power. To me, the big question mark in this, though, is Rivera's cardio. And I don't even want to say cardio. To me, the big question mark is Rivera's ability to pace himself. Because I think that Mizugaki, he did get tired at the end of his fight with Nam Phan, but he was still fighting. Whereas when Rivera was trying to finish George Roop, I think we would have seen George Roop win that fight if the referee hadn't stopped it. And yes, Roop was badly hurt, but Rivera was done after finishing Roop. He spent every ounce of his energy, and it paid off. But the kind of guy who's willing to do that, especially against a guy like Mizugaki, who's very hard to finish and very resilient. I mean, if Rivera hurts Mizugaki early and goes for it, that's pretty much a guaranteed Mizugaki win, the way that I see it. Mizugaki's just too resilient, too crafty. He's one of the most veteran guys in the division. Really tough fight to call, all the same. Rivera could get that knockout early, and if he fights smart, he's been improving. So, he looked better than ever against Roop. I'm going to have to say Mizugaki, just for consistency. He's fought the best guys in the world for a long time. He hasn't exactly beat them, but he's been competitive for ages now. And I think he's smart enough and diverse enough to beat Rivera on the feet.
And Dallas, your take?
Couple questions again, if I may. Has Mizugaki ever lost via strikes in his entire career? And if so, how many times? So while you're
He's been knocked out once.
By who?
He was knocked out by
pre-WEC?
Way back.
Yes, by Kenji Osawa early in his career.
2006.
And Osawa's pretty legit too.
Yeah, in his 8th fight. I wouldn't hold that against him now.
Yeah, because and then another thing, Connor, when you kind of lauded his striking defense, one of the points I was going to make is that it seems like Rivera often, or there's been a theme where he comes out with a head full of steam, but then ends up, and it's not limited to his striking, but ends up getting finished rear naked choke, getting caught with a punch. Am I wrong there? I'm going from memory.
You're right. That's kind of the pattern of Rivera's fights. Look really good, then get finished.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure. So my overall assessment on this is these guys are similar in that highly, highly aggressive. I mean, bordering to the point on being, well, I would flat out label Rivera as a brawler. And I kind of like Cub Swanson in the fact that it doesn't mean he's necessarily sloppy. But to me, the big difference in this is Mizugaki is a guy who can have a brawling type style, meaning relentless pressure and aggression, always coming forward and throwing a pretty wide array. I mean, rib roasters, that left he throws to the body is just nasty because he'll go for the chin, in his opening so many combinations, and then right as a fighter is getting tagged and thinking, man, I really need to concentrate on these shots coming at my grill, he'll go down low and just slam home that left to the body. And to me, that's the difference here is that, first of all, I love having a fighter like Rivera. If you were teaching kids how to fight, you would not say do what Rivera does. That being said, I love that we have a guy like him, still not only fighting in the UFC, but doing well and knocking cats out. So he's the kind of guy that I respect immensely, and I hope we can still have, unique fighters, kind of like I said about Kikuno. I just don't want to always see the traditional cookie-cutter fighters. It's nice to have a guy who something really jumps out about his style, and with Rivera, he's going to throw his hands until either he's done or his opponent is. Unfortunately, I think Mizugaki's very well attuned to capitalize on that because he's a guy who can be highly aggressive like a brawler but still maintain some excellent technique. His defense is also good. His chin is good. He not only has judo skills in the clinch, but he has a lot of traditional wrestling. You'll see him drop for a lot of singles and doubles, and then even transition. I want to say he transitioned to a high crotch against the fence in one of his recent fights, and also excellent submission.
Underrated ground and pound and top game.
So if you line all that up, I mean, of course, with Rivera, to me, he's got blistering punches. He can, shellac Mizugaki, but Mizugaki's got the advantage in a lot of other areas and the better chin, so I'm going to go with him.
And the odds makers agree. They've got Mizugaki as a slight favorite, anywhere from minus 167 all the way up to minus 191. Rivera's the underdog, anywhere from plus 140 all the way up to plus 153, so not a huge range there. But that brings us to a big fight. Welterweights Jake Ellenberger and Robbie Lawler. This one is going to be scary, mean, and badass, right?
Don't
fellas?
Jinx it, Nate. Don't jinx it.
I know. We've been burned before. All right, Dallas, this is your baby first.
Man, I mean, what do you say about this matchup? This is one that seems just destined to happen. I I mean, unless you want me to go through and describe their fighting styles, I mean, this is razor thin. I'm leaning a little bit towards Robbie here. I think, and this is, just speculation, but Jake has lost a ton of momentum. A big part of that was with the Rory McDonald fight. And as an Ellenberger fan, I mean, when you can't get in, first of all, I thought he should have been prepared for that long-ass jab. People were mad at Rory, but if you can stand out on the fridge and plug jabs, and I meant fringe, not fridge, because you could stand on the fridge. I mean, that was disappointing because I thought he should have had an answer to that. He should have known it was coming, and when he didn't, he should have done something, knowing that. I mean, to kind of coast it out, eating jabs like that was kind of disappointing. So obviously, momentum is favoring Robbie Lawler. I actually think that Jake might be I think he is the better wrestler, and he's probably the more powerful guy if they connect and get into standing tie-ups. But I think Robbie's just intelligence and experience will be able to at least kind of compensate for that, if not be a little bit better. Robbie's got way better angles. I mean, Robbie is a polished boxer. Whatever Connor said before, I don't remember who he said it about, but I feel like all fighters, when they're growing and evolving at the top level, come to that point where they're not quite sure where the line is between this is the technique, this is what I do in training, and oh yeah, this is a fucking fight. I'm supposed to punch this guy in the face as hard as I can. Robbie has a phenomenal, he walks that line really, really well. So, this is going to be a barn burner. It could go either way. I'm going to go with Robbie.
And Connor?
I'm inclined to agree. I think that the Rory McDonald fight's a very good benchmark. I think that Robbie Lawler did to Rory McDonald what we expected Jake Ellenberger to do to Rory McDonald. And I think that's because Robbie has just enough savvy, enough craft to his striking to really make his power punching effective against anybody he wants. And Robbie Lawler is the kind of guy, we didn't think he'd be at this level, but I think the fact that he spent so long on the fringe and just going kind of win-loss, loss-win, whatever, having a kind of 500 record for a little while there, that's what made him the fighter that he is. He's a veteran in the best sense of the word. He has learned a lot from his career, and that showed against Johnny Hendricks. It showed against Rory McDonald. He's very, very crafty. It's very clear that he thinks out what he's doing. One of my favorite things from that Rory McDonald fight was that Robbie Lawler is so comfortable in the ring from his wealth of experience that in the first round, Rory McDonald started throwing front kicks at him, and Robbie Lawler, who never throws front kicks, started throwing them back, and then in his corner he said, "Do you like that? That kick is mine now. I stole that kick from him." He just saw Rory doing it and decided to try it, and it worked. He's a guy who's calm enough to implement stuff like that on the fly. And Ellenberger, much like I said with Rivera before, I don't think with Ellenberger it's an issue of conditioning. I think Ellenberger, and I'm talking about the fact that he tends to gas here, I think that Ellenberger is incredibly athletic. I'm sure he's in great shape for every fight. I'm sure he works very hard. He's got that wrestler's just nose to the grindstone mindset to him. But he can't pace himself. And the issue is not that he's not well conditioned. The issue is that he throws it all out in one round. And if you get past the first round with Ellenberger, it's like the classic Vitor fight, It's just he has nothing left after that. He throws nothing but power. You can tell in the way he tenses and grits his teeth and lunges into every single shot. And yes, that means he's incredibly dangerous early, but Robbie Lawler survived some brutal punches from Johnny Hendricks, who is at least equal to Jake Ellenberger in terms of pure punching power, and I think is a bit savvier of a fighter. I don't know. I'm rambling here, but I favor Robbie Lawler. The only advantage that Ellenberger has is his wrestling. He can take Lawler down, but Lawler showed against Koscheck and Hendricks. He's very good at getting up from the bottom. He's got an excellent butterfly guard, very good at elevating the fighter's hips and getting back to top, escaping to his feet. I don't know, man. Veteran guile beats out raw power.
And Lawler can really hurt people in scrambles like he did to Koscheck. So it's the tables can turn very quickly for a wrestler who thinks that they've got Robbie Lawler under control. The cat is dangerous. Ellenberger is very dangerous too. I don't see this fight disappointing us and not being an action fest, but it's high stakes. It could be Jake Ellenberger's last sniff at contendership. It could put Robbie Lawler right back into the title hunt, ready to get a rematch with Johnny Hendricks. Man, some people think he beat. And
before you go to the odds, I'm sorry, Robbie Lawler, I can't remember him getting knocked out or TKO'd in a fight.
Nick Diaz.
Way
Oh,
back.
right.
The most famous Robbie Lawler fight of all.
Yeah, but I mean,
A very
I don't know if
different
you guys,
Lawler.
That
I
was
don't know if
long
you guys
ago.
have his record up, but he's fought forever and he's fought a shitload of killers, and I want to
Yeah.
say he's proven that he can take a punch.
Yes.
And Connor, I really enjoyed that ramble because when you're right, when Jake gets in that mode, it's like all he's using is power and timing. Am I right? You know,
He has
doesn't
good
really-
timing, and he's got a good natural sense for striking. I mean, he's very well suited to that Rafael Cordero style. But am I mistaken in thinking, that he's no longer with Cordero? I think that was kind of part of the backstory to that Rory McDonald performance.
Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, I know he was at King's before.
Yeah.
I think King's and Reign MMA have kind of a...
I think he may have no longer been working with Cordero. I don't know if he's back with him now or not, but that's not a good sign because if that's, if Ellenberger without Cordero is what we saw against Rory McDonald, he better have found another good trainer because he had no idea what to do, and nobody was telling him what to do.
The way I look at, Cordero, so classic shootbox is kind of what Ellenberger was doing. I mean, raw brutality, a lot of straight lines, and a lot
And
of...
he couldn't do it against
time.
McDonald.
And to me, Robbie, if anyone wants to learn beautiful timing and precision, look up Robbie's combination that he landed on Matt Lindland. I mean, it's unfathomable, all the elements that were in play there. So I think Robbie's got good timing, too. In the fact that Jake comes forward and just looks to time power versus a guy who's got head movement, footwork, he's got a good grasp of angles, and the same kind of punching power and timing, and he's a more dynamic boxer too. I think that's tough.
The thing with Ellenberger's timing.
We got 2 more fights to get to, and
ask us to come on the show
and talk for an hour, and we're already over time. So the odds makers. This is the sexiest fight on the card, though. I think from a lot of angles, competitively. The Cormier fight's probably more significant. The Barao fight's obviously a title fight and significant, but I think there's a lot of frisson to this fight, so I sympathize. You guys want to talk a long time about it, and I don't think anybody said these guys are both mean, tough bastards. Like, no mercy, no sympathy for their opponent coming from either of these guys. They revel in the pain and misery of their opponents. Lawler is favored anywhere from -213 all the way up to -265.
Watch Dallas' face, everybody. Dallas's expressions.
What, the revel in the misery of the pain of their opponents?
I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that. That was a nod of approval.
Yeah, what? I was broadcasting. All right, Jake Ellenberger, the underdog, anywhere from +177 all the way, or +170 all the way up.
I was broadcasting. We're all broadcasting. Numbnuts.
But
what does that even mean?
Professional broadcasting, like.
Oh,
come on, like gonna get the Golden Mike Award again. Dan Henderson versus Daniel Cormier, light heavyweights. This fight has title implications for Cormier, redemption implications for Dan Henderson, possibly the oldest fighter in the UFC today. Never had the UFC belt. He's had the Pride belt twice. There's a lot of stakes to this. I think one thing I want to throw out there, the weight factor. Cormier's a guy who wrecked his kidneys training for the Olympics, did not compete in the Beijing Olympics in 2008. He's coming down to light heavyweight. He was 15 pounds over when he was on the Jay Moore show on Monday. To me, there's a little bit of an aspect of sending a guy in. Like, if you send in a guy who's had multiple knockouts in their career against a headhunter, people are going to be like, oh, I'm worried about his long-term health. I'm worried about Daniel Cormier at light heavyweight. I'm sure he'll make it. It seems like he's making the cut responsibly. Nonetheless, I worry there could be serious consequences from making these weight cuts in his late 30s, given his history. Anyway, let's get to the fights. Dallas, you can go first.
Well, despite that malicious kidney accusation, I don't see any reason to pick against Cormier. He's coming off both the way in the commentary booth. I kind of like it. It's not like he's a real likable, charismatic. I mean, he is, but he's a real no bullshit dude. And some of, when he speaks out against John Jones, I mean, he's all business. So to me, based on whatever weird interpretation that is of his personality, I would be shocked if he missed weight. That to me seems like something that Daniel Cormier would not allow to happen. So for whatever that's worth, I mean, who are you going to pick to beat Daniel Cormier? I mean, sure, with Dan Henderson can knock out Jesus with that right hand, but
Jesus has a legendary chin.
He does. And Henderson's got a Wookiee penis of a right hand. So, you know what I mean? So that could always happen, but Cormier is a freak. He is like a wrecking ball. He's like a bowling ball with obscene maneuverability. I mean, for a guy to be shaped like a fucking beer keg and to be able to move so fleet of foot around the octagon and to have the hand speed that he does, I mean, I don't know. I think maybe, no, I don't know. I mean, Henderson is the kind of guy, like we were talking about Robbie Lawler. The difference between Robbie and Jake is when anything wasn't working with Robbie, he put his head down and charged in and put his hands on Rory McDonald. Dan Henderson, that he will do that. It's hard not to kind of be down on Hendo after the Shogun fight. It's not really down on him, but that wasn't the kind of win, where I don't know. I don't think Hendo can really hang with Cormier. I think Cormier's got youth, agility, speed, strength, the better wrestling pedigree. His wrestling's more tuned to MMA, but, I mean, more dynamic. Hendo's got what he's always has, and that's the H-bomb. He's gone a long-ass way by making that work, but I don't see it happening here.
All right, Connor?
Henderson versus Shogun, their last fight was the reason that we still talk about the puncher's chance as a factor, because there was only puncher's chance that won that fight. I absolutely agree with Dallas. I think everyone else agrees, too. Henderson looked terrible. I mean, he really looked bad in that entire fight. He looked hesitant. He was hurt numerous times. Henderson's always been the guy who's not been impossible to hurt, but he's just so determined that he's very good at coming back, and he's very resilient, good recoverability. But I can't ever remember him getting hurt that much, that easily.
Vitor Belfort.
Yeah, I think Vitor Belfort.
That was one and done.
Yeah,
Connor's right. Hendo might get rocked in a fight, but he got wobbled and buzzed numerous times.
And I think it's been a pattern. He got hurt more than he used to against Shogun. He got hurt very badly against Vitor, and then he got hurt basically any time Shogun touched him with his right hand or his left hand when he wasn't throwing a jab. If it was a right hand or a left hook, it hurt Henderson. That's not a good sign. I don't think that Cormier is exactly going to knock him out. I don't think he really has the power to. He hits hard enough. It could happen. But, man, Henderson's just, I think that's just an indicator of how shop-worn he is at this point. He's slow. He doesn't look like he's taken a step back technically even. It's basically just the right hand now. There used to be some nuance to his game in setting up that right. When he fought Bisping, it's not easy to land a shot like that on Bisping and to corner a guy like with Bisping's movement, and he did it. He looked really good against Bisping, and that's not the same guy we're seeing fighting anymore. And also, no TRT. We're going to see a significant difference, I think, in his performance. There's really no reason to pick against Cormier at all. It's Cormier's fight to lose in every way possible.
And the odds makers reflect that. I mean, to see these odds against Dan Henderson, anywhere from minus 735 all the way up to minus 950. Those
with a
are
right hand like Dan Henderson's. You should never approach him. Ever.
I mean, I think again, the gambling thing. But if you go that way, this might be one to drop a dime on. Also, people accuse us of promoting gambling. That's why I put the big disclaimer on it. Anyway, Dan Henderson, the underdog, plus 458 all the way up to plus 360.
Who accuses us of promoting gambling?
Well, people do. From the corporate side, anytime you talk about a specific website that gives gambling odds or takes bets, like, they talk about it. The Department of Justice, for example, would talk about it like that. Anyway.
That's a sin.
I knew the Department of Justice. I knew we had an impact on them. It was only
I'm just saying, whatever. I'm trying to keep people on the straight and narrow here. And that brings us to the UFC Bantamweight Championship fight. Renan Barao as the ISP provider. I was on hold with my cable company the other day, and they told us to don't miss the action when undefeated champion Renan Barao faces defensive machine TJ Dillashaw. What the heck are you trying? Don't buy this pay-per-view. Nothing will happen. A guy you've never heard of against a guy who doesn't do anything. Anyway, that was the build-up. Bad form on the part of my cable company. Great fight, however, a very good fight, if not great fight. 4-star, if not 5-star.
It's a great fight.
You think it's a great fight? There's an element of TJ Dillashaw I see being at one of a chain of opponents. I don't see him as the kind of titan coming to take the title that you really get anticipation for, but it looks like a great chance for Barao to bolster his resume. I almost said resume. Anyway, but who wants to talk about this epic
how you call him Rainin, but you want to say Hezame.
I know, it's so confusing. Well, because that ad really, when they come out and say "Rain on Berryhoo," I was just like,
I love Berryhoo. I think it's the right name to put next to a goofy name like Dillashaw. Berryhoo versus Dillashaw sounds good.
What's goofy about Dillashaw? All right,
like
I guess
English
you want to talk about
man.
it first. You do expect him to come out in a tweed jacket with like elbow patches and everything.
A full plate of crumpets.
All right, Dallas.
I hope TJ stands for like Terrence Jones Dillashaw. Terrence Dillashaw.
Terrence Javier. I'd rather talk about shit like this. I don't have a lot to say on this one.
It's really to make fun of the guy's name. He can't help it. Anyway, go ahead.
It says the leader of the Berryhoo channel.
I'm telling you an ad that Mike
like
put on the air. On the phone. On the phone.
Come on, man. Don't be so sensitive. I'm just fucking with you. So I think I'm just going to go quick on this one. I think some of the people aren't so excited about this as we had Uriah Faber, who's the king of Team Alpha Male, and Dillashaw has been kind of a protege and understudy of him. If Faber can't do it, and Dillashaw is, I don't want to say copying, but obviously he's got that Team Alpha Male style. A lot of people are saying, well, hell, if King Team Alpha Male and Uriah Faber can't do it, how can Dillashaw? And I understand that. I will say, and this is a bold statement, that the way that Dillashaw has not only improved his striking, but that motherfucker can phase shift, meaning he can unbolt a lightning fast combination with his hands, sets it up with angles really well, and the way he can transition into a double leg is really, really good for such a young cat. I'm tempted, I don't know, I don't even want to open that can of worms up, but he could get up to Uriah's level of phase shifting. I was not so high on Dillashaw at first on, let's see, The Ultimate Fighter. Who was that? Dustin Pag, I think. He kind of went a little control heavy, and he got knocked out by Dodson. But since then, man, he has really, really looked good.
And he didn't really get knocked out by Dodson.
I actually think he did. I mean, anytime you fall flat on your ass with your arms out, even if it's only for a second.
He was locked out with a single when the ref stopped the fight. I don't really think that was a good stoppage.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was a great stoppage, but it's one of those, I mean, it was Herb Dean, I believe.
He got clocked. I mean, whether he got...
Oh, he certainly got caught. He definitely got caught.
It's one of those where in the heat of the moment, I put myself in the ref's shoes, and then they're thinking safety first. So really, I mean, and Dillashaw's done the best thing you can. If that knockout was bullshit, you come back and you make a name for yourself and you prove that you're a viable cat, and he's done just that. So I got a lot of respect for TJ now. That being said, I think it's going to be competitive, but I mean, Berryhoo. That's it. That's all I got to say. What the fuck, He's like a maelstrom of Muay Thai violence. Fucker hasn't lost since his first MMA fight in 1922 or whatever. No reason to pick against the dude. I do think that Dillashaw is competitive. Even if the fans don't buy this and see it, I don't care. This will be a competitive fight, but I'm obviously leaning towards Rainin.
And Connor?
I'm actually very, very impressed by Dillashaw, and I would wager to say that the question to me in this fight is, Dwayne Ludwig's not going to be there, right? He's not going to be there, or is this his last fight with them?
It seems like there is a lot of... I mean, Faber has gone from being respectful but regretful that Bang has left the camp to being bitchy and petulant about it.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Well, they're going to fight to get through.
Because I thought he was there till the end of May.
I don't know. I'm just saying the interviews Faber was given this week, I would be quite surprised if I see the two of them comfortably working together in Dillashaw's corner.
Well, that's the key moment, or not the key moment. That's the crux of this entire fight to me, and how Dillashaw will perform, because that was the crux of Dillashaw's progression as a fighter. He was always very talented, but once Dwayne Ludwig came to that camp, I mean, over the last year and a half, Dillashaw has really, really turned a corner. To the point where I'd say that had Dillashaw continued to progress like that, he'd be better than Uriah Faber in a year. I mean, his progression has been outstanding. His phase shifting, as Dallas said, is top notch. Nobody's better at faking a shot and coming up with a head kick than Dillashaw. It's like his favorite move, and he can land it on basically anybody who stands in front of him too long. He had a competitive fight with Rafael Assunção, which I did have Assunção winning, but I also rate Assunção very, very highly. I think Assunção is incredibly underrated. And I don't know, man. Dillashaw's just been on a tear. He's looked absolutely outstanding. He's tough.
So are you going to pick the upset or not?
No. I mean, I can't. I mean, it's
halfway through the analysis.
Yeah, but
sorry, I couldn't wait. He was getting me all lathered up.
We're trying to broadcast, Nate.
Yes, you got to tease, Connor. You got to say, not yet. Don't you want to know?
Can we edit that out so I can do some kind of, I don't know, unsettling teasing gesture? I'm just going to broadcast like this all the time. Here's the thing about Dillashaw.
That would be sweet to do a whole show like that, wouldn't it?
You got to have your chin up in the air more. Here's the thing about Dillashaw. Oh, God. Damn it, Nate. Damn you.
You out halfway through that. You should have.
I lost my train of thought. Here's the thing. Dillashaw, an absolutely brilliant phase shifter. If he doesn't have Dwayne Ludwig with him, that's been the thing that's clearly been a factor in his improvement. So I think that we might see Barao run through him if he doesn't have Ludwig. If he has Ludwig, or if he's just retained what Ludwig taught him and doesn't need him there in the corner, I think he'll do better against Barao than Faber has, either time. I really do. I think that he's going to be relatively competitive, even if he gets finished, which he very well might. Barao's a killer. Even if he gets finished, I think he will make it a very competitive fight, much like Eddie Wineland did before getting finished. Have a round or two where it kind of looks like he's beating Barao. Barao's greatest strength is that the longer you spend in there with him, the higher chances are that he's going to kill you. He's just very, very good at figuring his opponents out. And he doesn't always look great at the beginning of the fight. Uriah Faber was doing okay against him in their rematch until he got his leg hurt by that kick. And Michael McDonald was doing okay against him, and then he got finished. Eddie Wineland was doing okay, and then he got knocked out. Everybody does okay against Henan Barao until he murders them. Can
I just throw something out real quick?
Well, I got to keep saying first. People lose to Henan Barao kind of slowly and then all at once. Okay, now Dallas, you can
Very
talk.
good.
Deep shit. If you think about it, the guy who gave Henan Barao his best test is fucking Cole Escovedo. I'm just saying, Cole's my boy, but back when you watched that fight, that was early on in Barao's career, and Escovedo was doing really I think he probably performed more competitively against him than anyone else has. That seems bold, but I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
That's the thing that really sets Barao apart from Aldo, in my opinion. The two guys from that camp. Aldo's far more technical. I think Aldo's more composed and really just keeps his cool. But I think that Barao is much better than Aldo when it comes to working his way around rough spots. I think he is. And it's not just toughness for him. He's got smarts, man. He sees openings, and he goes for them. The way he knocked out Wineland, I mean, he got Wineland reacting to that left hand and completely got him to bite in a feint and got him to lean right into that spinning back kick. Not many people are good enough to set up a spinning back kick to the head and knock somebody out with it. And
Barao has, I'm sorry to interrupt, but on that topic, he has much more fluidity than Aldo. You know, Aldo's mean, his stance is rigid, and he's all Muay Thai. It's all turning the hips over and just power. In Barao, I mean, I don't think I can remember someone throwing a spinning back kick that accurate and staying that perfectly on balance. I mean, he throws a spinning back kick.
He'll throw a spinning back kick and follow it up with other strikes. I mean, he's that balanced. He gets a little wild and open, but he plants. He's very good at keeping his feet under his body. We'll just put it simply like that. He's very good at keeping his feet under himself, and that's why he hits hard. That's why he's hard to hurt. That's why he's so hard to get away from. Dillashaw could pressure him. This is the thing. Barao's defense isn't great, and when Barao gets pushed backwards, he doesn't really counter. He's got to come forwards to win, but he's very good at hurting the other guy enough in wild exchanges to convince them to back away from him. But Dillashaw's really good at coming forward. Those level changes, the wrestling, the mixing up with the strikes. I don't know, man. I'm really into this fight. I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup. I'm predicting like Dillashaw looking really good for the first 2 rounds and then just slowly starting to fade and probably getting submitted in like round 4. That's my prediction of this fight.
Pretty bold to go that exact. The odds makers like some Barry who they've got him favored. Seems like minus 800 across the board. Actually, minus 653 up to minus 800. TJ Dillashaw is an underdog. Plus 414 is the worst. The closest the odds come all the way up to plus 590. Which for a fighter this good, even against a man who's arguably definitely top 3 best pound for pound fighter on the planet. Dillashaw's better than that, I think. I mean,
can I say that every time I come on this show, I realize that MMA bettors are morons?
It's a herd. It's a herd of
These
people.
betting lines make no sense almost
People
every
in the
time.
masses are dummies. That's, the wisdom
Chandler
of crowds.
was minus 1,000 against Brooks last week. 1,000.
That's insane.
I wish I had bet on that, even though it's a sin. Damn it! All right. Anyway, any final thoughts on this this card?
This may have been the most disjointed episode I've ever been a part of.
Well,
Yeah, and my closing comment is, with all due respect, I need to get the fuck out of here immediately.
All right, we gotta run. All right, well, we'll call it a wrap. What a treat! What a treat!
It was. Today was a treat.
It was fun. Good
ins,
show, guys.
a lot of
Good
outs.
analysis, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. Adios, MMA aficionados. Remember to give us a like on the video. Subscribe to MMANation.com on YouTube.
How do they
Read
give
us
a
on
like?
BloodyElbow.com. There's a thumb. Click the thumb that's below the screen. God, now you made me forget everybody's Twitter handle. Follow Dallas at Uncle Justice. Follow Connor at Boxing Bush, BUSCH. The tricky, and that's his attempt to make his Twitter handle easier to get. But we're working on it, honing his game. The kid's young, he's talented, he's hot, he's on his way up.
You learn that hustle from Kid Nate.
Yep, and we're going to be doing the 6th round. Any of you guys going to be able to join me and Zane for the 6th round after the fight? Anybody?
I don't think so. I think I have to.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, no worries. But we'll have the 6th round. I'll have the bathroom review. There'll be knuckle up, etc., all the usual stuff. So adios, aficionados. This is Kid Nate Bloody Elbow. We'll see you next time.